Workforce Committee garnered 1 billion views worldwide. And it's because those university presidents made history by putting the most morally bankrupt testimony into the congressional record, and the world saw it. As a Harvard graduate, I'm reminded of Harvard's motto, Veritas, which goes back, and it's older than the founding of our country. It goes back to the 1640s. In addition, the motto was Veritas Christo et Ecclesiae, truth for Christ and the church. Larry Summers, who was president of Harvard when I was an undergrad, talked about the meaning of Veritas is divine truth, moral truth. Let me be clear, Veritas does not depend on the context. This is a moral failure of Harvard's leadership and higher education leadership at the highest levels. And the only change they have made to their code of conduct, where they failed to condemn calls for genocide of the Jewish people, the only update to the code of conduct is to allow a plagiarist as the president of Harvard. Shifting gears to what is on the floor this week, I wanted to highlight the National Defense Authorization Act. I'm a proud member of the House Armed Services Committee. Our Speaker and our House Republican Conference and our committee members have done tremendous work. Wanted to highlight the Parents' Bill of Rights provision, which I know the Speaker fought very hard for, that we're very proud to have in the bill. That was a provision that I authored and garnered bipartisan support in the House, but unfortunately Democrats fought hard to keep that out. Our Speaker got that provision in. And I also wanted to highlight Chairwoman Cathy McMorris-Rodgers' tremendous work on her health care package, standing up for patients to lower cost and bring more transparency in the healthcare space, specifically highlighting the community health centers provision, which we worked so hard in my office with the committee members to get included. So with that, I want to turn it over to Erin Houchin, who has been such a strong advocate on the healthcare provisions. Erin.
Thank you, Chair Elise. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on the Lower Cost, More Transparency Act. The rising cost of prescription drugs is among the issues I hear about most from my constituents. Because of this, I was proud to lead Republican efforts on the Hidden Fees Disclosure Act, and I'm glad to see it's included in the Lower Cost, More Transparency Act. I thank Chairwoman Rodgers for including it, that just passed the House last night. It's bipartisan legislation that is the first step toward driving down the cost of health care, and this bill is not just Washington smoke and mirrors. It contains actual reforms that will bring better health care and lower costs for families. It will lower the cost of prescription drugs for Americans through transparency. It will require transparency and accountability from pharmacy benefit managers who have failed to follow the law. It will allow small business owners to compete in the healthcare market. We can't drive down the cost of health care without full transparency. Until that is achieved, we are going to keep contending on behalf of patients. I look forward to continuing our work together on health care affordability, and I yield now to Chairwoman Cathy McMorris-Rodgers.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Congresswoman Houchin. Last night, we took a major step, a historic step, to drive down the cost of healthcare with price transparency. It's an issue that over 90% of Americans support. We're empowering patients and employers to shop for healthcare and to have access to the accurate information about the cost of care, the treatment, and the services. You know, I think about a person who saw her out-of-pocket costs skyrocket from $30 to $350 simply because her doctor's office was purchased by a hospital system. Or the woman who was hit with a bill totaling $11,000 more than what she was originally quoted. Our bill will help patients like them. And it's a major bipartisan healthcare victory for the American people. I urge the Senate to help send this bill to the president's desk because it's going to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. So thank you, everyone. And I get to introduce our whip, Tom Emmer.
Thank you, Kathy. This week, House Republicans are going to bring a resolution to the floor to formalize our impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. Put simply, this vote will allow the House Judiciary, Oversight, and Ways and Means Committees to continue their investigations. The evidence mounting against the president cannot be ignored. We know Joe Biden has lied to or misled the American people about his knowledge of his son's business dealings over and over again. And it is very likely that he was involved in and benefited from his family's corrupt business dealings as well. So the House has an obligation to continue gathering evidence and ensure the American people get the transparency and the accountability they deserve. Yet the Biden administration has been stonewalling our investigations. The Department of Justice has refused to allow 2 attorneys to testify before the Judiciary Committee. The White House sent Chairman Comer and Jordan a letter stating they have no intention of complying with our subpoenas and requests for interviews without a formal vote. And the National Archives has withheld thousands of pages of documents and emails. It's clear the House will have to defend our lawful investigations in court. And passing this resolution will put us in the best position possible to enforce our subpoenas and set forth a clear process. As we have said numerous times before, voting in favor of an impeachment inquiry does not equal impeachment. We will continue to follow the facts wherever they lead. And if they uncover evidence of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, then and only then will the next steps towards impeachment proceedings be considered. No one in this country is above the law, and that includes President Joe Biden. Now it's my privilege to turn it over to our leader, Mr. Scalise.
Well, thank you, Whip. We will be wrapping up a very busy year at the end of this week. We have a number of important votes. The Whip just talked about the impeachment inquiry vote that'll happen tomorrow. The NDAA will be voted on Thursday. But if you think about where we started this year, it's been an up and down year. I know for those of you in the press, there's never been a week where it was boring for you. It's been a lot to cover. But we started the year confronting D.C. crime. If you go back to the beginning of the year, we brought bills to the floor to start addressing the things that we laid out when Republicans ran to get the majority in our commitment to America. We told the country what we would do. We laid out an agenda, and we immediately started to bring those bills to the floor. And if you think about one of those first bills that we brought to the floor to address crime in D.C., Joe Biden actually issued a veto threat on the bill that we brought to the floor right before he signed the bill into law, because he realized that not only had we built momentum behind it, but the public was fed up with crime. We continued to stand up for those problems that have been created by the Biden administration. We put together H.R. 1, a great strong energy package as families were paying more at the pump, 50% more when they go to fill up their cars for gasoline, because Joe Biden had shut off the spigots in America while going to foreign countries and begging dictators to produce energy in their countries, making it harder for us to produce American energy, which, by the way, is the cleanest energy in the world. If you want to lower carbon emissions, make your energy here in America. Don't fly Air Force One to Saudi Arabia or give breaks to Venezuela or Russia or Iran. And so what we did is passed a bill to make it easier to produce energy in America, to lower costs for families. We passed that bill over to the Senate. They refused to even take it up because Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden want families to pay more at the pump. We came together and recognized for years that there is a crisis at the border. The day Joe Biden took office, he opened up America's border, sent the message all around the world, not just to South and Central America. And we've seen millions of people coming into our country illegally, including people on the terrorist watch list, people from over 150 different countries. And it's gotten worse. The crisis continues to escalate. So House Republicans came together and said, let's fix this problem. We invited Democrats to join with us to address this problem as well, as Democrat mayors all around the country were ringing the same alarm bells telling the president to fix this problem that he continues to ignore. And so we passed H.R. 2 months ago, sent that over to the Senate. And the president refuses to engage in any negotiations on fixing the border crisis. The Senate, led by Chuck Schumer, refused to even engage in this problem. And they thought that they could just continue to ignore the problem while asking for funds for other countries. And so when you saw Speaker Mike Johnson come into the speakership, he made it very clear. As we talk about Ukraine and other issues, we have to secure America's border first. And he laid that marker out very, very early. And Joe Biden's continued to ignore that. But more and more now, people all across the country recognize this as a crisis. Democrat mayors, again, continue to say it's a crisis, but Joe Biden will continue to refuse this problem. We're not going to let this go away. So we passed a strong border security bill. We passed a Parents' Bill of Rights. We've had oversight hearings in committees, not just exposing the corruption that you're seeing within the Biden family. You talked about the hearing that we had last week that the House Education Committee had in Virginia Fox's committee, where Elise asked a basic question. And it was a question about whether or not genocide of Jews is okay with a code of student conduct. A very simple question that every college president should have been able to answer. And yet you saw the moral bankruptcy and the failure of those college presidents to answer that basic question. Got over 1 billion impressions globally. And I think alarmed and shocked people all across the world, not just here in America. We've exposed anti-Semitism and called it out for what it is, and we will continue to do that as well. We're going to continue to bring legislation to address the problems that are hurting families all across this nation. But this has been a busy agenda for this House this year. Next year is going to be just as busy, regardless of what the size of the majority is. And so while I know there's talk about how hard it's been or how small the majority might be, when you think about all the bills that we've passed over to the Senate to address the problems that struggling families are facing, the Senate at some point is going to have to start taking up those bills and start taking some action. Joe Biden should start looking at those bills and realize the damage that Bidenomics is doing to families and the cost that it's having on them, and that there is a better way to address these problems, and House Republicans will continue to lead. And leading that effort is our Speaker, Mike Johnson. Happy to bring him up.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I appreciate that year in review. There is a lot to discuss and to remember. It seems like this year was multiple years, doesn't it? A lot going on. Look, democracy is messy sometimes, but we work in the greatest deliberative body in the world, in the history of the world, the United States Congress. And the House Republican majority is moving the ball forward to continue to lead. I do want to talk about just very briefly this health care bill, because this is a big thing. I'm really grateful to Chairwoman Kathy McMorris-Rodgers and Energy and Commerce her committee, for their leadership on this important issue. On top of spending $15,000 more annually just to afford basic goods, American families, we all know right now, are struggling. And they have to contend now, of course, with needlessly opaque, inefficient, and an unaffordable healthcare system. We have to do something about that. So the Lower Cost, More Transparency Act that we'll pass is our House Republicans making good on our efforts to bring down the cost of healthcare and empower American people to make their own healthcare decisions and not have the government and bureaucrats in the way. The bill is a broad, bipartisan supported piece of legislation. It arms patients with accurate and transparent information about the cost and care of prescription drugs. That's a big deal, as you've heard discussed here. It supports community health care centers and preserves Medicaid for hospitals that serve rural communities. Many of them I represent in my district in Louisiana. And this is a critical and necessary assistance for rural healthcare providers. Make no mistake about that. And also, this bill is going to expand access to generics and lower cost or lower out-of-pocket costs for our seniors. And they desperately need that relief, and we all know it. And here's the kicker. As was noted, the entire package is fully offset. And so it actually reduces the deficit by more than $700 million. What a concept. House Republicans are committed to making health care more affordable and prices more transparent, and we are committed to doing so in a manner that is fiscally responsible and improves care for our constituents. So we'll be happy to pass that off the House floor. I know you probably have a few questions. We'll take a few. We'll go. Chad, I owe you one. Go ahead.
Thank you, Good morning. I keep hearing from Republicans who say we're going to follow the facts where we lead on this impeachment investigation. But aren't there going to be a lot of conservatives in your party, because this has been drummed up for so long? We're going to do impeachment. We're looking at these tax records. We're looking at the Hunter Biden stuff here. That if you guys don't call an impeachment vote in the next few months, they're going to say, wait a minute, that's it. I mean, haven't you put them over the barrel a little bit if you, in fact, do not have a vote to impeach the President of the United States in a couple of months?
Chad, we're following the Constitution, and I've made this very clear. Remember, my background is constitutional law. I served on an impeachment defense team twice under President Trump. We developed, unfortunately, Elisa and I, an expertise in this area. This is not something they really covered in law school. What you know about impeachment, if you look at the Constitution, is it's a heavy authority that's given to the House, specifically to the House. That's where the power lies. And next to the declaration of war, you've all heard me say many times, I think it may be the heaviest power that we have. It's very, very serious business. It has to be conducted in that way. The impeachment inquiry is necessary now, as Whip Emmer just explained, because we've come to this impasse where following the facts where they lead is hitting a stone wall, because the White House is impeding that investigation now. They're not allowing witnesses to come forward and thousands of pages of documents. So we have no choice. To fulfill our constitutional responsibility, we have to take the next step. We're not making a political decision. It's not. It's a legal decision. So people have feelings about it one way or the other. We can't prejudge the outcome. The Constitution does not permit us to do so. We have to follow the truth where it takes us, and that is exactly what we're going to do. And I'll note, too, I know that people are frustrated sometimes with the time that's being invested in this, but this is the way the founders anticipated that something like this would go. There shouldn't be any such thing as a snap impeachment, a sham impeachment like the Democrats did against President Trump. This is the opposite of that. And that's why people are getting restless, because they want things to happen quickly. If you follow the Constitution and you do the right thing, you cannot rush it. You have to follow the facts. So,
But you don't think there's an expectation by the base that you guys are going, and again, I know all these predicates and caveats here. There's not an expectation that your side is going to impeach the president because that's what they were elected in the majority.
people have a lot of opinions and a lot of expectations on all sides. What we are bound to do, because of our oath to the Constitution, is to follow it, and that's what we're going to do. Next question. Yeah.
And just to follow up on that, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you get into the spring and decide not to impeach the president based on the inquiry, you would be comfortable with that decision, essentially absolving him months before a presidential election?
We're not going to prejudge the outcome of this. We can't, because again, it's not a political calculation. We're following the law, and we are the rule of law team, and I'm going to hold to that. That's my commitment. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a bit about the negotiations around spending top lines? What are the biggest roadblocks around that, and are you concerned at all about the upcoming deadline in a few weeks?
Listen, we're all hands on deck on the appropriations bills. As we know, we have looming deadlines, and we all agreed on that. But what we also agreed to was what's written in the law, and that's the FRA numbers on top line. The Senate has been projecting and writing well above that to the, billions of dollars. That's not what the law says. And so I came in as the new speaker, and I said, again, as the rule of law team, we're going to follow the law. So that's where the negotiation stands. We're awaiting a volley from the other side, should there be one. But the House has done its job. We passed 7 of the 12 approach bills. That's almost 80% of federal funding. 11 of the 12 have made it through the process, if not all the way to the floor. And so we're in a position where we could go to conference committee and negotiate this. Our appropriators want to do so. Our cardinals, as we call them, the chairman of the subcommittees and appropriations, are ready to do the work. But we're awaiting the other team, the other side, the other chamber, to come forward with a number that we can agree upon, that we write to, and that's the impasse, and that's what we're waiting on. But the law is the law. Yeah, right front row.
On FISA, can you kind of delve into your thought process going through that? You changed your mind multiple times on exactly whether it be a short-term extension or not, and you changed your mind yesterday on Queen of the Hill situation. Can you just walk us through how that thought process?
I didn't change my mind on FISA. See, FISA is a very important piece of legislation, and Section 702, which would expire at the end of the year, is a really, really important provision because it protects us on the homeland. It protects us from terrorist attacks. It's the tool that we use to uncover those plots when they're being planned, and it's been very, very effective in that measure. And that's why you have conservatives and liberals, progressives, who agree that it's a really important tool. What we all also agree on is that it must be dramatically reformed because it's been abused 287,000 times, I think, between 2020 and 2021. The FBI did queries on American citizens in violation of that law and our basic civil liberties. So we have this very important matter to determine and resolve, and you have lots of different opinions on where that is. We have 2 committees of jurisdiction, Judiciary and the Intelligence Committee, who have worked up different measures, different bills. We've only had the text of those for 4 or 5 days, something like that, about a week, and here we are near the end of the deadline. Now, as soon as I became Speaker, we knew the deadline was coming, and I brought those committees together. They were working from a working group, a task force that was put forward by 3 members of both committees that worked for about 6 months. Y'all may have seen, I think you have, they came up with about 45 reforms that would resolve all of these issues. But about 4 or 5 of those key reforms, there's a disagreement between the 2 committees. we're working towards consensus, but this is a very, very serious matter. This isn't some minor policy in our law. This is about keeping Americans safe. And so we take the responsibility seriously. As recently as last night, we were in a room with all the interested parties and House Republicans there, and there's still some disagreement about a couple of those key provisions. So I am not one who wants to rush this. I don't think we can make a mistake in this. I think we've got to do it right, and so we're going to allow the time to do that. So having a short-term extension on the NDAA allows us the time to work not only in our own chamber, but with the other chamber as well, to come forward with a compromise provision that will not only keep us safe, but will also safeguard our civil liberties. Both of those objectives must be achieved, and that's why it's taken a long time. Again, as I said at the outset, and I'll close with this, democracy is messy sometimes, but we have to get it right. We're the greatest deliberative body in the world, and we're going to do our job and do it well. Sometimes it takes more time than we would like, but it's worth it to get it right, especially on a product as important as FISA. So that's what we're going to do. Thanks, y'all, for the time.
We can get started. Burgess Owens is going to join us. Let me talk to you a little bit about the platform this morning. Burgess Owens is a member from Utah. He's on education and labor. I, sadly enough, had to leave education and labor because I joined Ways and Means, but I still am very, very active in this regard. And I want to thank everybody for coming. This is a big deal for us and a big deal for campus, and really aptly timed. So Burgess is going to join us in the first hour. Elise Stefanik, who is our conference chair, unfortunately told last night cannot join us, the way schedules work around here. Elise has been having a wonderful fight with Harvard, where she went to school, on the anti-Semitism